The salvage job was supposed to be simple: strip the wiring, grab the scrap alloy, get out before the dust storms rolled in. Darien Voss had done 100 jobs like this one across the dead moons of the perimeter, and none of them had ever talked back. He wiped grease off his hands onto his coverall, a habit that did nothing except spread the grease around, and crouched in front of the half-buried structure his scanner had flagged 3 days ago. Most of his crew called these things junk husks. Old alien ruins nobody wanted because nobody could crack them open without losing fingers or worse. Darien didn't care about the legends. He cared about the resale price of whatever metal was underneath 40 centuries of sand. "Come on, you ugly thing," he muttered, running a plasma cutter along a seam in the obsidian black door. "Open up." The door didn't open. The dust did, though, a fine, ancient powder that drifted off the carvings the instant his cutter touched them, and it went straight up Darien's nose. He sneezed. Hard. The kind of sneeze that makes a grown man stumble backward and drop his tools. The ground shook. Lights as gold, impossibly old, impossibly bright, bled up from seams in the stone that Darien's scanner had insisted were structurally inert. The seal he'd been cutting it didn't open so much as unmake itself, peeling back like a flower no one had watered in 1,000 years and suddenly remembered how to bloom. And then the voice came. It didn't come from speakers, because there weren't any. It came from the walls, from the ground, from inside Darien's own skull, like it had skipped past his ears entirely and gone straight for his brainstem. "The heir has returned." Darien, to his credit, did not scream. He did, however, sit down very abruptly in the sand. "The heir has, what?" "No. No, that was a sneeze, that wasn't a summoning, I'm a mechanic. For 3,000 years this tomb has slept, awaiting the blood of kings. The ward responds only to the breath of the bloodline. You have breathed upon the seal, mortal. The ward has spoken." "I have allergies," Darien said weakly. The light coalesced. Not into a hologram, not into a robot, into something that looked disturbingly like a man, 9 feet tall, wreathed in armor made of a metal Darien's scanner couldn't even categorize, with a crown of jagged light hovering over a face that flickered between solid and translucent like a badly tuned radio signal. Ancient. Regal. Extremely, unmistakably judging him. "I am High King Valor," the figure said, and this time the voice came out of an actual mouth, which was somehow worse. "Last sovereign of the Threneth dynasty, bound in stasis ward beneath this tomb until the rightful blood returned to claim the throne of the Ember Spire." "That's okay, that's a great name, very metal, but I think there's been a mix-up," Darien said, getting slowly to his feet and backing toward his truck. "I'm not a king. I'm not an heir. I'm a guy who fixes hydraulics on a salvage rig. I'm from Earth. I sneezed on your door because the dust got in my nose, that's it, that's the whole story." Valor tilted his head. Something that might have been a frown, or might have been a system recalibration, passed across his translucent features. "You are not of the Threneth bloodline." "Correct. You are not of any bloodline known to this ward." "Also correct, probably, I don't know your bloodlines, I know torque specs." "And yet," Valor said slowly, "the ward opened." "Sure did. The ward has not opened in 3,000 years. Not for generals. Not for emperors of 17 conquered worlds who came bearing the blood key forged from the heart of a dying star. Not for the Threneth cousins who tried to bleed themselves onto the seal believing dilution of blood was the issue." Darien blinked. "They cut themselves open trying to get in here?" "6 of them. It was a difficult era." Valor's gaze sharpened, fixing on Darien with an intensity that made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. "And then a mortal mechanic, bearing no royal blood, no key, no right, sneezes on the door, and the deepest ward of the Ember Spire unravels as though it had been waiting for nothing else. Look, I'm sure that's a coincidence." "There are no coincidences in wards built by architects who could weave time into stone," Valor said, and for the first time his vast voice dropped to something quieter, something almost unsettled. The seal was never keyed to blood. It was keyed to worthiness. The bloodline was only ever a proxy, the thing we believed indicated it. The ward was built to recognize something else, and for 3,000 years, nothing that came before it carried enough of that something to so much as crack the surface. Darian rubbed the back of his neck. Okay, that's flattering in a weird way, but I just want to grab some scrap metal and leave before the dust storm hits, so if you could just, I don't know, point me to the exit. You misunderstand, Valor said. There is no exit for you now. The ward has named you. Mortal or not, bloodline or not, the tomb has decided. You are the heir. I don't want to be the heir. Few who deserve a throne ever do, Valor said, and something in his ancient, weathered voice almost sounded like respect. That, mechanic, is precisely why the ward chose you over 6 bleeding cousins and an emperor with a star's heart in his pocket. The chamber around them shuddered again, and from the floor rose pedestals Darian's scanner hadn't even registered as existing, display cases holding weapons that pulsed faintly with the same gold light as the seal, and at the center of the room, half buried under 3,000 years of dust, a throne carved from black stone that seemed to drink in the torchlight rather than reflect it. That's a throne, Darian said. It is your throne. I have a truck payment. You have a legacy, Valor corrected, sweeping a translucent hand toward the chamber, and as he did the walls themselves began to shift, revealing star charts, dynasty records, the names of conquerors who had tried and failed to claim this place for 10 centuries. The Ember Spire was once an empire spanning 40 systems before the collapse buried it beneath sand and silence. You stand in the last vault of its authority. Take up the crown, mechanic, and the spire's old claims, its territories, its fleets in stasis, its weapons banked in vaults like this one across 100 worlds, answer to you. Darian stared at the throne. Then at the weapons. Then, very slowly, at his own hands, grease-stained, calloused, hands that knew engines and bolts and the particular ache of a 14-hour shift, not scepters. I don't know the first thing about ruling an empire, he admitted quietly. Neither did I, when the crown first found me, Valor said. I was a soldier. Not even a notable one. The architects who built this ward did not seek competence. They sought character, the capacity to be trusted with power and not be consumed by it. They watched the galaxy for 3,000 years through dust and silence, waiting for one being to walk up to this door for the right reasons, even without knowing what door they walked up to. I walked up to it for scrap metal. And yet you did not flee when the ground shook. You did not draw a weapon when a 9-foot ghost king addressed you. You worried, first, about a dust storm and a truck payment, about responsibilities already shouldered, however small. That is not nothing, mechanic. That is, in fact, everything the ward was built to find. Darian was quiet for a long moment, the gold light flickering across his face, the distant rumble of the coming dust storm audible even through 3,000 years of stone. If I say yes, he said finally, does that mean I still get to fix things? Or is it all just sitting on a throne signing decrees? For the first time, something that was unmistakably a smile cracked across High King Valor's ancient, flickering face. Mechanic, the old king said, an empire is simply the largest machine ever built, and every one of its parts is currently broken. I suspect you are about to discover you've never had so much work to do in your life. Outside, the storm rolled in over the dunes, and inside the tomb, the throne of the Ember Spire began, for the first time in 3,000 years, to hum with light that was no longer ancient, but waiting, patiently, for new hands to take hold.